Welcome back to Transcriber from Reddit. Today's topic comes from a website called the Wartburg Watch. This is a website devoted to exposing corruption within Christian denominations and churches. Today's read comes from one of their permanent pages, titled How to Resign from a Church Whether or Not You Are Under Church Discipline. Below the title is a quote. Quote, as a general rule, I would say that human beings never behave more badly toward one another than when they believe they are protecting God. End quote. Barbara Brown Taylor, Leaving a Church, a Memoir of Faith, linked here. Below that is an image of a person in gray walking away, surrounded in a brown haze with vaguely visible trees on either side. Below that is a link. And below that, in parentheses, says the following: this is a permanent page. It is subject to updates and corrections without notice. End parentheses. In the United States, you are allowed to resign from a church whenever you wish to do so, no matter what your covenant, church constitution, or designated church leader says, even if you are under church discipline. Side note, this section that I just read is in bold, and it's also a larger font than the non-bolded font down below. I continue reading. Your membership in the church is voluntary according to the law. You may end a voluntary relationship at any time. Churches can get into legal trouble if they attempt to ignore your resignation or they attempt to pursue you or discipline you in absentia after you have officially resigned from a church. In this post, did Southern Baptist and Southeastern Baptist theological seminaries replicate a Hotel California at Heritage Bible Chapel in Princeton, Massachusetts, linked here? We outlined a well-known case I think they meant that, was settled in favor of a woman who resigned from a church. In 1984, the New York Times wrote, Church vows to appeal $390,000 verdict in woman's privacy suit, linked here. Quote, Mrs. Ginn, spelled Guinn, who is divorced and a mother of 4, successfully sued the elders and the church for invading her privacy by confronting her about her relationship with the town's divorced former mayor. Other elders said they were still stunned by the verdict, returned Thursday, and by the realization that their beliefs, which they say are based on Scripture, may be so far outside mainstream thinking. Next section. On October 4th, 1981, the elders took the pulpit to denounce Mrs. Ginn for the, quote, sin of fornication, end quote. This was a few days after she resigned her church membership. Unanimous verdict. 12 Tulsa jurors, only 4 of whom called themselves regular churchgoers, unanimously decided that Mrs. Ginn's privacy had been invaded. They awarded her $205,000 actual and $185,000 punitive damages. Jurors also said they never doubted that the elders had erred. 2 jurors said the panel wished it could have awarded her damages for harassment. Quote, he was single, she was single, and this is America, end quote, said one juror, Bedonia Freeman. End overall quote. On the website Church Discipline, this case was reviewed, linked here, in 2008. Quoted below. By voluntarily uniting with the church, she implied consented to submitting to its form of religious government. but did not thereby consent to relinquishing a right which the civil law guarantees her as its constitutionally protected value. The intentional and voluntary relinquishment of a known right required for a finding of an effective waiver was never established. On the record before us, parishioner, a sui juris person, removed herself from the Church of Christ congregation rolls the moment she communicated to elders that she was withdrawing from membership. This next section is in all caps. When parishioner withdrew her membership from the Church of Christ and thereby withdrew her consent to participate in a spiritual relationship in which she had implicitly agreed to submit to ecclesiastical supervision, those disciplinary actions thereafter taken by the elders against parishioner, which actively involved her in the Church's will and command, were outside the purview of the First Amendment, parentheses 775 P.2D 778, end parentheses, protection, and were the proper subject of state regulation, end caps. While the First Amendment requires that citizens be tolerant of religious views different from and offensive to their own, it surely does not require that those like parishioner, who choose not to submit to the authority of any religious association, be tolerant of that group's attempts to govern them. Only those, quote, who unite themselves, end quote, in a religious association impliedly consent to its authority over them and are, quote, bound to submit to it, end quote. Parishioner voluntarily joined the Church of Christ, and by doing so consented to submit to its tenets. When she later removed herself from membership, parishioner withdrew her consent, depriving the Church of the power actively to monitor her spiritual life through overt disciplinary acts. No real freedom to choose religion would exist in this land if, under the shield of the First Amendment, religious institutions could impose their will on the unwilling and claim immunity from secular judicature for their tortious acts. End quote of overall section. Let's repeat this again for pastors who just don't get it. First section. The third point, though, is one many conservative churches most certainly went against the notion of church covenant. This is in bold. The court held that binding commitments to a church had no effect in law. End bold. End first section. Second section. All religious activity in the United States is consensual. A person who publicly claims not to be a member of a church is legally not a member of that church, and church discipline cannot continue without consent. This is in bold. A church attempting to discipline a person that has withdrawn can be found to be engaging in a form of harassment. End bold. End second section. This statement is in bold. Churches which pursue members after they have resigned can be in hot water. End bold. In Karen Hinckley's situation, which is discussed in this post, Church Discipline and Abuse, linked here, the village church's actions were so egregious that we were contacted by a number of attorneys who were interested in taking on the case. There is little question that had Karen not accepted Matt Chandler's apology, a large lawsuit would have been brought against the church. In our post, churches attempting to force mediation and limit members' right to resign under discipline, TM, linked here, churches are attempting to work their way around the law that allows for voluntary termination. However, churches have a problem. They cannot or will not describe to a potential member what the church will discipline or not discipline. A blanket statement, quote, "We practice church discipline," end quote, is too broad for any reasonable individual to understand what is meant. Therefore, members may continue to resign any time from a church. This is in bold. How to resign if you are not under discipline, end bold. When you resign, you have no guarantee that the church will not retroactively place you under church discipline. This is what happened to Hinckley. See Church Discipline and Abuse, linked here. Also, if you have resigned, quote, nicely, end quote, and they pursue you, you may need to send the harsher letter found under the section, quote, how to resign if you are under church discipline, end quote. Point 1. Send a resignation letter. This is in bold. We give special thanks to Arce, spelled A-R-C-E, who knows a thing or two for sending this format to the Wartburg Watch. Point 1. Send the following letter, return receipt requested, parentheses, and tracking in case the post office lets them have it without returning the card, end parentheses. Point 2. Put the return receipt number on the heading of the letter, parentheses, you can get the form with the number at the post office before typing the letter, end parentheses. This is in bold. Date. Next paragraph. To the pastors and administrators at blank church, end bold. Next paragraph. This letter is notice that I am no longer a member, parentheses, attendee, end parentheses, at blank church, effective with the date of this letter. Next paragraph, in bold, your name, end bold. Third point, you must mail the letter on the date on the letter, and they will not receive it for a couple of days thereafter. Point 4, keep a copy, print out the tracking showing when it was delivered, keep the green card or, if it is refused, the return letter, parentheses, they are legally responsible for the content if they refuse it, end parentheses. Number 2, this is in bold. We do not recommend that you meet with the church leadership after sending this letter, end bold. On a number of occasions, people have been asked to come into the church for a meeting with a pastor or pastors and elder or elders. We have received reports that these meetings are often difficult, with church leaders demanding that the resigned person seek their permission to leave the church. They may also demand proof of seeking church membership at an approved church. These meetings often lead to retroactive church discipline or harsh words, since some in leadership believe that they own you, not unlike an indentured servant since you signed their contract. Remember, you are not responsible for their feelings about your departure. Do not take their anger or disappointment personally. That is their problem. We suggest responding to a request for a meeting in a letter like this. Again, send this letter via certified mail. Paragraph. This is in bold. Date. End bold. Next paragraph. This is in bold. Dear Pastor Joe, or fill in your pastor's name here. End bold. Next paragraph. Unfortunately, this is an inconvenient time for us to plan a meeting. We wish the church well and thank you for your interest. Next paragraph. This is in bold. Your name. End bold. Next section. This is in bold. How to resign if you are under church discipline or anticipate being put under church discipline. End bold. Unfortunately, this is a time for you to play hardball. We know it is hard and empathize. However, keep the goal of leaving the church with minimum damage before you. Remember, when you joined the church, you had no idea what kind of men were running the church. They may have seemed nice in the beginning, but grew increasingly authoritarian, often disciplining people for ill-defined reasons such as disrespect, for authority, asking too many questions, causing divisiveness, failure to support the vision, asking about finances, a matter of conscience, etc. No, you are not going crazy. This sort of thing happens frequently and keeps the Wartburg Watch in business. Here is the letter you, must send in this instance. This is in bold. The steps. Point 1. Resign your church membership prior to the all-church announcement. Better yet, before harsh discipline is applied. Point 2, keep your lips sealed. Point 3, do not tell anyone that you are going to take the following action. You do not want Sally Sycophant, parentheses, we all know a few of these, end parentheses, to run to the pastors and report this, giving them an opportunity quickly schedule the all-church gossip session. Next section. In bold, the letter, end bold. We give special thanks to Ars, who knows a thing or two, for sending this format to the Wartburg Watch. Point 1. Send the following letter, return receipt requested, parentheses, and tracking in case the post office lets them have it without returning the card, end parentheses. Point 2. Put the return receipt number on the heading of the letter, parentheses. You can get the form with a number at the post office before typing the letter, end parentheses. Below is an example of the letter. First paragraph. This is in bold. Date. Second paragraph. This is also in bold. To the pastors and administrators at blank church. End bold. Third paragraph. This letter is notice that I am not, I believe they meant no longer, a member, parentheses, attendee, end parentheses, at blank church, effective with the date of this letter. Fourth paragraph. As a non-member, I am no longer subject to any of your discipline as of, parentheses, date on letter, end parentheses. After, parentheses, date on letter, end parentheses. Any publication, notice, or speaking about me by any church staff or recognized church leader is no longer authorized by me. Any negative remark or statement about me, any encouragement that people shun me, or any action other than deleting me from your records will be evaluated for possible legal action for libel or other tort claim against the individuals involved and the organization. Paragraph 5. If anyone asks about me, refer them to me. Any other action may result in a tort claim against you. Paragraph 6. These words are in all caps. You have been warned. End caps. You must desist from any act that may harm my reputation or me or come between me and other persons of my acquaintance. Legal action may ensue. Paragraph 7. This is in bold. Sincerely, end bold. Point 3. You must mail the letter on the date on the letter, and they will not receive it for a couple of days thereafter. Point 4. Keep a copy, print out the tracking showing when it was delivered, keep the green card or, if it is refused, the returned letter, parentheses, they are legally responsible for the content if they refuse it, end parentheses. Point 5. Document any response or any failure to comply. If they, parentheses, leadership or staff, end parentheses, call, listen but do not talk, except to say, quote, I disagree, end quote, if they make a false statement about you. Point 6. Document the conversation. Point 7. Go to an attorney if they proceed to trash your reputation or that of your business. Point 8. Do not respond by trashing the organization. Point 9. Keep track of all emails, texts, and phone calls from the church to you. Point 10. Do not participate in any meetings and do not have discussions via email or text. Remind them that you are busy and that you do not wish to be contacted. If possible, put that in writing and leave copies to show an attorney if they refuse to leave you alone. Next section. This is in bold. What to do after it is over. If you attend a new church, do not tell the pastor or other members of your experience at the previous church for a prolonged period of time. End bold. Pastors talk with each other and are prone to believe the story of another pastor over the story of a mere church attendee. Parentheses. Dee learned this the hard way. End parentheses. This directly violates Jesus' admonition to not show favoritism, but that is a story for another time. Also, be aware that some pastors often repeat those things told to them in confidence. If a pastor reports your, quote, sins, end quote, to a new church after receiving your letter of resignation, seek legal advice. This is in bold. Consider remaining a non-member in a new church, especially in the short term, end bold. Most churches allow non-members to participate in most activities except for voting and church leadership. Also, they will be most happy to accept your donations and your willingness to volunteer in church cleanup day. You know the red flags after your experience, so go slowly. There are good churches with kind pastors out there, but sometimes, if I think they meant it, takes a while to find one. Side note, I do not blame you if you do not want to ever find a church again. Take a break from churches and go your own route. If you have any doubts, trust that God will find you. I continue reading. This is in bold. Contact the Wartburg Watch if we can be of assistance. End bold. We have heard just about everything, and we are willing to support you during this time. We also have lots of readers who have gone through such an ordeal. If you are going through this as you read these words, know that you are not alone and that we care. Keep this in mind. Even if your church abuses you when you resign, the church is not Jesus. You are deeply loved by him, even if the church treats you like an indentured servant. Then, in bold, it says, here are some links to the Wartburg Watch posts on resigning from a church, end bold. Churches attempting to force mediation and limit members' right to resign under discipline, TM, linked here. The presumption and favoritism involved in the 9 Marks view of church resignation, linked here. How to minimize damage when resigning from a Mark Driscoll-like church, linked here. The Gospel Coalition gives potentially problematic legal advice on church covenants and civil lawsuits, linked here. Did Southern Baptist and Southeastern Baptist theological seminaries replicate a Hotel California at Heritage Bible Chapel in Princeton, Massachusetts? Linked here. Marie Natcheva's story of church abuse featured in Sentinel and Enterprise News, linked here. The allegedly abusive church discipline practices of Steve Estes, senior pastor of CEFC and lecturer at Westminster Theological Seminary, linked here. 9 Marks and grace to you. You dumb sheep can't last without an approved TM church to protect you, linked here. 9 Marks and church discipline at SEBTS. What about case studies? Linked here. It's Heritage Bible Chapel's, quote, drop dead date, end quote. Marie's father pleads, quote, stand your ground, Marie, end quote. Linked here. Mark Deaver / 9 Marks edict. You cannot resign without, quote, permission, end quote. Linked here. Below the article are comments. As of recording this, 222 comments. As I was reading this, before recording this, I thought to myself, this needs to be put out there and spread to every Christian member, regardless of denomination. It doesn't matter if you're WELS, ELS, CLC, ELCA. It doesn't matter if you're Episcopal. It doesn't matter if you're Baptist. It doesn't matter what flavor of Christian you are. If you are in an awful relationship with your church, or if your pastor seems a little bit culty to you, please leave. Your faith will be much better without it. And you as a person will be much better for it. You matter. And that is a true message of what Jesus focused on when he was here on earth. Us all as individuals, we matter. And that's what pastors and churches so often forget. And that is tragic. That concludes today's video. Please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, leaving a comment down below, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.